Hi, I'm Debbie Dane, Executive Director at WilliNet. Today I'm here at the Town Hall in the Selectmen Meeting Room with Town Manager Jason Hoch, who started his tenure here as Town Manager in September 2015. I'm sure most of you have seen him. He was on the Holiday Walk. He's been welcomed by the Chamber of Commerce. He's been attending lots of local civic organizational meetings, and of course here on WilliNet for the Selectmen meetings and various other meetings. We are here today to sort of catch up on some municipal business, and hopefully this will become a regular monthly meeting. Welcome, Jason.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Remind us, you're from New Hampshire. Your background is a municipal leader in New Hampshire.
Right. I've spent the past 18 years in New Hampshire in local government, serving as assistant manager in Littleton in the White Mountains, and then a short time in Plastow, sort of on the Massachusetts border on the other end of the state, and most recently in Litchfield. I'm originally from Philadelphia, so you may hear a little bit of that sneak in sometimes when I talk about things happening on Water Street, but
and of course he's a Williams graduate, the first town manager who is an alum, which is a new and nice addition to your resume.
It's been fun. I mean, and for me, this was a place, once I decided I sort of had a career in public service and that I really enjoyed serving in towns of 5,000 to 10,000 for a lot of reasons of being close to staff and the community. Williamstown was always on that list. You know, it's been part of my life for 25 years. So when the opportunity to come back arose, it was something I really was interested in pursuing.
Really nice. I think we're lucky for that. I just want to remind people that Williamstown has had the town manager form of government since 1953. The town manager is the chief administrative officer and the chief fiscal officer of the town, and is accountable to the 5-person board of selectmen who you report to. You're required to attend the selectmen meetings, but we have a very active civic government, and now that we're back in business in January, are you required to attend other meetings? Tell me your philosophy or requirements.
I'm required to be selectmen's meetings, obviously. There are some committees that I serve on as an official member, say the Community Preservation Committee. I'm a voting member, so I do serve on that. Others that I'm available. I don't necessarily have to attend, but I think generally my approach has always been both to staff and board members. If they feel that my attendance is constructive, I'm generally happy to attend.
Mm-hmm. And do you make it your business to watch them if you can't attend and you might have other commitments in the evening, or to count on Berkshires and Steve? How do you get the news of the meeting?
How do I get the news of the meeting? Usually I'll follow up. Often we have staff connected with them, so I generally know what's happened. Say with our land use boards, if I haven't been there, I'll catch up. I'll catch up with Andrew Groff in our office the next day. I will sometimes watch snippets of them here and there, or we'll follow up directly with the chair if needed. So,
Excellent. Well, what we're going to do today is look back at some of the municipal meetings that have met and look ahead through the rest of January. And it's been a busy time already. Planning Board met on Tuesday of this week, January 12th. They had a 3.5-hour meeting, continuing a discussion that started actually quite a while ago, involving Mike Deep and the owner of Wabika, requesting a zoning overlay district to allow him to work with a developer to build a hotel on the property. The planning board's been looking at this for a while. Tell us what happened. You were there.
I think actually I wasn't.
Actually,
I wasn't.
That's
all right. That's all right. I did. I had managed to get a range of follow up on it. I think to back up a little bit on this. Wabika is this wonderful asset in South Williamstown. Beautiful, beautiful golf course. Really important asset in that part of the community. The challenge with things like golf courses is, by themselves, they're usually not financially sustainable. I mean, if you look around the region, and in some ways, it's also like ski areas.
Yes.
When you have just the recreational amenity, it is really hard to sustain that. And so I think that as the current owner of Wabika has invested in sort of protecting and opening up and enhancing that facility, the realization came that we need something else to throw off a little bit more revenue to protect this asset in the community. The suggestion had been a hotel as a way to provide more money to, and honestly, good benefit for the town. I mean,
Tax money.
not only is it property tax money, but it's also lodging tax money. So,
Right.
so there's a twofold municipal interest in this as well when we think about pure revenue point of view. So the tool to pursue this that Planning Board has been working with him on over the past several months is an overlay district. So basically what that does is it takes the existing zoning and keeps it in place, but says, hey, we're going to create a overlay. So you're going to create something sitting on top that says, if you want to do this other use, you may be able to do it if you meet these other conditions. So there's a little bit of trade-off back and forth. And so that's really been the essence of the discussion the past couple months has been, if this is going to happen, what's the trade-off? If a hotel is appropriate, what happens for preserving the rest of the golf course? What's the exchange for that? And earlier the conversation was, do we look at just that site? Do we broaden it to say we want to create and endorse some of the rest of the activity and encourage, in South Williamstown, really from Five Corners down to that site? And so the Planning Board's been kind of wrestling with that over the past several months. I think given the high level of interest in the neighborhood, the approach has been probably more deliberate and longer lasting than in some cases, and I appreciate kind of everyone's patience on both sides of it continuing to go through this. And I think, these aren't easy questions. On the other hand, I think zoning changes generally are supposed to be about the broad rules of the game. And I do watch, you always wonder what's going to happen in your neighborhood when somebody proposes something big and new. So I understand some of those concerns. I think in some ways, too, it's been interesting. We have become spoiled by the college in their projects over the past several years, because the college has the benefit of a slower timetable, greater ability to invest. So when they have asked for changes in the past, they've been able to show things very far along in the development process.
Yes.
That is a highly unusual case.
Because lots of money is involved.
Because they've put a lot of money up front in it, and that's not for your normal development, that's not what you see, but we've become used to that here.
Yes.
And which, in general, in some ways it's been great. I don't knock, always better to know more than less. But I think that's one of the other things that we're wrestling with now is we've lost track of how real people develop.
Yes, and so let's bring people who might not be aware, didn't see the planning board meeting and haven't watched over the last several months. The planning board is asking, many of the members are asking for more detailed plans. They want to know who the developer is.
Right.
They want specific drawings. At this stage, and that's what you're referring to. The college has been able to do that.
The college has already done that, which is highly unusual. And so it ends up being that because you do all of that on the front end, we have other processes for these.
Yep.
In a normal routine, things will come back to the planning board for a development review once it meets the zoning test. There are things that require special permits that will go to the zoning board. We have our process allows a lot of review of specific detail when it gets there.
Yeah.
But again, we've been spoiled by having so much compressed because the college has been so good to the town and sort of laying it all out that we've forgotten that smaller scale development doesn't work that way.
It doesn't, does it?
No, because I've been involved with a lot of commercial development coming in, particularly when I was in northern New Hampshire. We had a wave of development come in the late 90s, early 2000s. And that's not how you don't get the fully hatched plan at the start of the process.
No. And so we had an economic development committee work for a year to create some recommendations about how to grow our economy because it's shrinking. So this is an interesting question because at what point is the owner of Wabika going, when the option's no longer there, to perhaps develop it? Because he's articulated that it's not financially feasible going into the future as just a golf course.
And I think that's the challenge. I appreciate, we had a committee that spent a year meeting with a lot of people, wrestling with it. One of the messages that came back was our rules and processes may not be the most user-friendly. And so the trick, however, and this is what we have in anything, you can have that conversation in the abstract. Now that the rubber's meeting the road, it's, and that's kind of the real question we have to wrestle with. How many of these ideas that we believe in the abstract will be beneficial are we really willing to accept and pursue? And I think that's one of my challenges, not only looking at that, but as that committee delivered their report to me, I've been spending some time over the past several weeks since I've received that report saying, okay, where are we going to have the greatest chance of success in the short run on this? Because, moving from theory to reality is tricky. And we're all human. If somebody comes in and suggests to do something in my neighborhood, I might be a little concerned about it. I'd want to know more. And I'm very happy to suggest what people can do in other neighborhoods. I've done, and the thing is, right. I laugh about. I've done some of that work. Some of my time in New Hampshire, I served on the state Main Street board, and so I would do downtown assessments in other places, and it's very easy to tell other people what to do. But when you have to own it yourself, it's trickier, and we're all human. So.
Well, staying down in South Williamstown, the Community Preservation Committee met on January 6th, and we're considering 10 applications for funding. We won't go through all 10, but let's start with the Williamstown Historical Museum request for $15,000. As we recall, they're going to be moving eventually into the Little Red Schoolhouse down at the Five Corners. And the South Williamstown Dog Park put in a $3,500 request, and there was some conversation about that. Why don't you bring us up to speed on that?
Well, as with most, if you've observed local government over the years, you often realize that one of the smallest items will generate the largest discussion. So in this case, the request for the $3,500 or so for some fencing for a dog park was by far the smallest monetary request the committee got. So, of course, in best local government tradition, that's what we spent the most time wrestling with.
And the dog park was proposed, or the fencing was proposed to be behind the Little Red Schoolhouse.
Right. Where this came from is the lot where the Little Red Schoolhouse is a very long lot. It has the schoolhouse we see up front, and you see some of the old playground amenities to sort of the near backyard. Backyard goes way back, and then the cemetery is behind that. Ironically, when you look at a map, that's all one property. So we had already started having a conversation about sort of subdividing that. The museum obviously needs a building. They need some amount of yard, but they were never going to have the cemetery. So we were already drawing a line on that lot to say, you're not going to, you don't need the whole thing. It's kind of, and we wouldn't stick that on you anyway. So when a group from South Williamstown said, hey, we have to explore this idea of a dog park, I looked at it and said, okay, let's explore this a little bit. Part of what my job to do is whenever citizens come in with an interest is to support that, help them work through the process. And certainly not at the beginning of me kind of sitting here saying, yeah, that's a great idea, that's a bad idea.
Right.
Here are the tools you need to go pursue this. It may succeed or fail on its own merits down the road, but it's not, at the front end, it's not my place to do that. So we've had kind of very productive conversations with them over the past couple. Remember, this has been maybe since October. This is not a long time.
Right.
These are a few casual conversations over a couple months. And it looked as if there was a way to sort of have both of these uses work. The museum is moving. They have, they have a great challenge of fitting out that building and programming it, and then moving to what goes outside. So there's a sort of a time horizon. This is not all magically going to happen this summer.
Right.
And so could that all work somehow? And then I think the other part to look at was if a notion of a dog park in general. People who have dogs enjoy kind of the goodwill of the college and whole field. But on the municipal end, it becomes a little trickier because you always have issues of liability and the like. And so making it on public land actually provides a lot more protection than if you decided, hey, I got a big backyard, I can host this myself. If then you have an issue, then you take on the liability. Because we have sort of public sector immunity in so many ways, it's a lot safer for us to do it. It's sort of the same notion of doing a skateboard park.
But here's a question that just dawned on me. But does it fall under the community preservation, which is one of their requirements is a historical?
Recreation.
Recreation. Thank you.
Recreation.
Thank you.
Recreation. It's very simple. You're creating your
Excellent.
recreation space. So that was the nature of the conversation. And so the South Williamstown group, I think they conducted a survey. Some people watching this may have actually responded to that survey, found a pretty high level of interest. They raised some money. All of the things that you would hope any interested citizen group would do. They looked for our help, kind of owned it, and went out and tried to put it together, as opposed to somebody sort of dropping it at the doorstep at our meeting
Yes,
here saying,
yes.
here's a problem, go fix it.
Yeah.
You know, and which is, you know, sometimes that's what we do. I think the conversation kind of veered a little further afield. I think the museum folks, fairly thought, hey, we've been proceeding, and you know, we have this whole thing. We know we don't have the cemetery, but the rest of it's all ours, and that's fine.
And
so there was a little bit of a disconnect there,
Yes.
and I think, unfortunately, that disconnect, you know, it really wasn't the place at CPC meeting, but it was
I see.
where it ended up happening. And I think since then there have been some conversations between the two groups. I mean, my hope is still that
They'll work it
reasonable people will be able to work through kind of a reasonable.
And I know that Sarah Curry, the director of the museum, had articulated that some of their thoughts are to use that lot for maybe some antique farm equipment or some demonstrations, not that one would preclude the other.
Right, and I think it's a great
people
opportunity. I mean, I would love to see them
Yeah.
they actually have the opportunity to put stuff outside now.
Yeah.
And that's what we should be doing. You know,
Yes.
not everything for a museum belongs inside. There's some great stuff that they can do on that
Yes.
site. And so the issue just is, do you need the whole yard
Can they work
365 days a year? I
Yes.
mean, I think, you know,
Yeah.
we have enough land down there, and I think my sense is that both uses can be fully meet the needs of both groups. So I'm
Excellent.
hoping we get there.
Just a couple of others. We won't go through all 10 applications. The Affordable Trust, Housing Trust, made application.
They do. They are looking to continue a program that they have done in the past to help new home buyers and sort of be this last leap to get them into a home. And they've been very
Which is an
successful.
imaginative.
It's a great.
Yes.
It is a great opportunity because because I think we look at people who are very close to traditional funding. You know, we provide affordable housing, sort of in a lower economic scale, and then you kind of have that next step up where people can get there, but it's a reach.
Yes.
And so this has allowed them to give some people that last little boost to get in there.
Great.
And so I think they were looking to be able to have enough funds to fund 5 more of those.
Nice, nice. And then First Congregational Church.
First Congregational Church was a very interesting proposal. They are looking at the community meeting space and making some improvements there. And it's an interesting dilemma. And I think, the committee was looking for how to position part of this to meet those requirements. We mentioned earlier, we have historic preservation, recreation, and housing as those 3 Community Preservation Act goals. So fitting it really in the historic preservation piece and recognizing that community hall has a huge public community benefit. It's not just a church hall.
Yes,
You
absolutely.
know? And so, but luckily, some of the things that they were looking to do really met the preservation test. So I think one of the things we asked was, because we have to meet the rules of this, can you define just the preservation piece? They did a great job explaining this whole project that they want to do, of which they are asking the committee for only part of it. So, which was wonderful. We could see the big picture. But now so hopefully we can tighten that up. But real great opportunity to preserve the community meeting hall, upgrade, and then with other money upgrade the kitchen.
Nice.
And really
Nice, that would be wonderful.
fill out that asset.
And just on an overview, you guys I think asked some of the applicants to see if they could trim them so you could meet what you have in your budget.
Right, because we had a lot of applicants this year, which is wonderful. But if we fully funded everybody, we're like right at that line of fully available funds.
Yes.
And that also recognizes that we then would have no carryover for next year. The committee has consistently carried some part over. So I think we have to get to that hard choice of what doesn't get funded at all, what is realistic to fund at a lower point. So I think all of those applicants were given some sort of homework of we have more questions, or can you sharpen the pencil, or can you make us feel more comfortable. So the January 20th, they will be back for their next meeting, and we'll see where we get in the committee. I mean, it's a lot for us to go through.
And we vote on that at town meeting in May, so that will come in the future. Which gives us a chance to talk in a larger arena about the Spruces, because Spruces Land Use also came to you all.
Yes.
And where are we on Spruces? What grant? And give
Sure.
us an update.
Okay, so from the on the community preservation angle, the reuse committee asked for some money to do some actual designs of some of the things that they're thinking about for reuse. So looking at some of the fields, looking at an additional bike path to complement the main through path we're looking at. All of those things need some additional engineering and design, a little bit of wetlands identification. also making sure the plans meet the floodplain requirements. We are severely limited in what can actually happen on that site for good reason. I mean,
Yes,
we have this for good reason. So, going and rebuilding a whole bunch of stuff there isn't feasible. So they have brought forward a proposal to kind of get them to that next level. So perhaps at a future town meeting, the town may be asked for the actual investment if needed for the improvements that they determine. There's also another project looking at improving, protecting the newly opened swale on the side of the property that used to be a closed culvert to improve some of the water quality of the water that's going through that swale out into the Hoosic River. So that's what the committee has to look at. Bigger picture, we are nearing the end of this project of relocating everybody.
Is everybody out?
No.
Okay.
However, at this point, everybody has a plan. We are down to, I think, about 10 residents there. Several of them are waiting to move to Highland Woods. Remember, way back, this was one of those exchanges. Right. So we are hoping that that will be available for people at some point in February. So the residents that are remaining in the Spruces now, most of them will be able, who have lined up to be on Highland Woods, will be there.
I'm going to ask you very specific. 10 residents, how many homes?
No, sorry, 10 units are there.
10
so
units,
yeah,
okay.
not 10 residents. That's probably misstated that. So we expect, I think 7 are moving to Highland Woods of those remaining. I think there may be some other former residents who were in that process as well. We have 2 people who have identified, 2 to 3 actually, that have identified other locations to move to.
In town? Or
Yes, a little of each. I mean, I think the upwards of the 200 that used to be there, some have found places in town, some have moved out of town. So I think of the remaining, one is, one are looking out of town, one may be in town. So we've reached that point where we've kind of been working closely with each remaining one to make sure they have a plan. Then also, the town has had the obligation then to, after we purchase all those units, remove them, sell them. And unfortunately, we've reached the point that the last few months we've mainly been moving units that just had to be removed. They didn't have a resale value. We got very lucky with the weather. The weather being so pleasant, allowing us through the end of December. The last unit that we could move went out New Year's Eve.
Excellent.
And it's kind of fun sitting here. The guy that the town has been working with, who's been hauling most of these units, it ends up going past Town Hall. So as he goes up North Street, we see the purple truck and we see a unit going past. So we're able to track his progress in our office here. There was a flurry of activity end of December into January that was probably very visible to anybody driving past again. Sort of a 2-stage process in the apartment building and old rec hall.
The rec hall,
Both of those buildings, we first had to bring in an asbestos abatement contractor. Actually, we've had a lot of asbestos throughout. Those were big items, but even many of the units we've had asbestos abatement on those units before they can leave. And that may be something that most people haven't realized, that it isn't just pick it up, haul it away. In some cases, we've had to do that work and meet that obligation. So we had the asbestos abatement coming in, probably very visible on the rec building as people drove past, see people in protective suits wondering, oh my goodness, what's happening there now? With that part done, we've been able to demolish the buildings. And so that is the apartment went very early, and I think over this past week now, we have seen the recreation building go down, and all of that material be hauled out.
And so cleared by spring.
We're hoping by spring, because what we have once the residents move out, most likely we still have a little bit of time. Winter may still be around. It looks like we may have some. So we won't be able to get to removing the rest of the pads and removing the rest of the units probably until spring thaw, post mud. And then we'll get those out, and then we have a closeout with Massachusetts Emergency Management, because we've been funding a lot of this through a large grant and then some other funding through the prior owners. So we have a lot of paperwork, financial transaction exchange that needs to happen, hopefully May, June timeframe. So it'll be less on site and more in this office to close. And then most likely after that, there'll be some smaller work out there. Utilities have some underground work they want to remove. We may or may not be grinding some of the old roads there, depending on how reuse looks. So.
And timetable for a strategic plan for it, because there's lots of different groups that are involved with that. We don't need to go into too much detail, but what,
I would hope. I think that we've had a committee meeting for probably the past year or two. So they're close to the idea. That's what led to this CPC application. We'll see where that funding goes and what the design looks like. And in some ways, it's good that we have a committee focusing on it, because our staff has been so focused on the get everything out, meet the requirements of the grant, that focusing on what comes next. Our biggest obligation, it's a big ticket item to get that last grant closure from emergency management. That's our priority.
And I bet you want to make a shout out to your assistant, Deb Turnbull, who's been overseeing a lot of paperwork on
Deb
this.
has been unbelievable in this office. I mean, I think she has been the face of the town for many of the residents as well. And I think, being able to work with them, understand their issues, be sort of helpful, collaborative, supportive. It is wonderful to have that. And she's also managed much of the paperwork on our end. And we've also been, really lucky to have a pretty incredible public works department who've been able to do a lot of that work on site. And our guys have spent a lot of time down there. I see Tim Kaiser, our public works director, infrequently now because because we've talked about as I get acclimated to more things. I'm like, right now, you're best. Just
do your thing.
You're doing such an incredible job. Stay there. I'll learn from you later, because that will eventually end.
Yes. Another big issue, sort of connected, is Affordable Housing Committee met, and why don't you update us on what some of us used to know as Photek, but we are now referring to as 330 Cole Ave.
We are now referring to it as 330 Cole Avenue. This is the affordable housing project down at the end of Cole Avenue on what had been the Photek site. Yes, we were trying to reposition it to its future rather than its past. Joke sort of internally, if you're familiar with the concept of a swear jar, that I'm going to set one up, and anybody here who calls it Photek is making a deposit. Because I think, in general, it's time to look forward, and this project is really starting to do that. So there was a meeting in late December that was narrowly tied to an Environmental Protection Agency grant, and so I think your viewers on WilliNet had that to be able to watch, and also teed up online. It was because I completely appreciate it, and it was like a week before Christmas, and really not the best time for a public meeting. I know that. That was really, there was a narrow requirement of the grant to have a public meeting at that point. So to check that box, we did it. But we also realized, hey, it wasn't fair. Just if I truly met the requirement of that grant, it would have been an extremely boring, maddening presentation for anybody who really wanted to know what was happening. So we did that, but recognizing that that was not the best timing. The Affordable Housing Committee had the project proponents in, I think, the January 12th.
Yes.
And so again, I think you guys covered it, so there'll be more detail there. So it's not. This isn't immediate. We're still a couple years out on it. They're still working through some designs, looking at kind of really building a nice neighborhood of some single-family homes, and also looking at creating some units, being able to they've figured out that they can actually retain and preserve the building that's remaining down there. So we'll have this a little bit of the historic asset down there too, instead of being all new. Interesting.
So to be continued.
To be continued. Yeah, that one. There's a long path ahead on that one.
That's 330 Cole Ave, formerly Photek. Zoning Board is meeting on January 21st, and just some minor, I'm expecting requests, because Williams College is moving ahead on its gorgeous new science center.
It's new science center, so there's a review that's required there for special permit, and so they are going through that process. And again, this is going to be a multi-year, very complex process. Their project people have been really good working with our staff for months before, because obviously there's real impact to us for some of the issues of stormwater, construction management. There will be an impact. One of the great positive long-run benefits, and not only are they looking at building capacity for them, But as we looked at some of this, we've really been able to advance a conversation about extending Walden Street.
Yes, yes.
From its current terminus at Hoxie Street over to South Street. So in effect, we would have a much better connection between downtown and people going to the Clark, and hopefully alleviate all of the lost GPS souls speeding through the Knolls trying to get from one to the other as well.
And also speaking to the Economic Development Committee's recommendations. So
it's a very positive outcome. So I think, one of the nice things is that I think we're looking at a real long-run benefit for the town as well as part of that project. And there's a real practical issue as well of this. This also means that hopefully we can get some of that construction traffic out. In the absence of that, they would be on Main Street, coming down Hoxie Street or coming down Stetson Court. So I mean, it's really, there's a real good short-run benefit. But I mean, the long-run benefit, I mean, once it's there, we as a community get that.
That's wonderful.
For, perpetuity.
And just a small asterisk of note, this week the college has backed off the possible location of a new art museum across from Williamstown Savings at the bottom of the hill on the north side of the street. I think it's back into committee. Is that your understanding?
Yeah,
Yep.
That's my commitment. I think any time you start with, and committees sort of wrestle with a whole bunch of ideas to begin with, and there are certain priorities of whoever's sitting at the table at the time.
Yep.
And then you work through and you bring more people to the conversation, and sometimes it changes. I think this was an early part of a conversation that I think began to take on a much larger life of its own before it really had other thoughts and views integrated with it to be a full plan. But I realize sometimes, sitting on the outside, it's hard to tell. I mean, let's face it, the college has been building a lot.
Yes, happily so, because there was a freeze in 2009. We are happy to see.
Because, there's a great multiplier of all of that money. There are people staying here, spending here, but there's been a lot of activity. So for somebody who's not connected like we are here in Town Hall, understanding where a project is in the trajectory. So, and look, I mean, in some cases I remember there's probably still a little bit of anxiety about the Opera House going away when Spencer Art Studio was built.
People have memories,
I mean,
that's back to your time
that was back to my time as a student. That was near the end of my time as a student. I remember that dialogue, which was amusing as I went on to do some graduate work in historic preservation. It was kind of fresh in my mind.
You inherited from Peter Folan the Newtown website, which is a sort of out-of-the-box municipal website.
Right.
It's got some beautiful pictures from Carol Stegeman and it's talk a little bit about it.
Sure. I mean, I think the town's website was definitely ready for a refresh, and so really over the past summer, our staff, notably in community development, particularly Sarah Hurlburt and Andrew Groff, have really kind of spearheaded getting everything there. And it's always tough to move from one to the other. And then learning the setup, the setup of it. I think ultimately we will have something that's a little more user-friendly.
Yep.
It's still a work in progress. We were just working on parts of it this morning, and it's also figuring out what people are using on the website.
Yes.
And there are some parts that sort of our public information repository, and people expect to find things there. But then there's other things like, hey, if you never look at it, why am I going through the exercise of putting it up all the time? So we have, we have that sort of balance of figuring out what works, what doesn't. I know on my end with selectmen and manager, I mean, our approach is different for the content that we generate. If you've watched our meeting since I've arrived, you will notice that the selectmen all sit there with either a laptop or an iPad because we've moved to all electronic packets for our meeting.
Yep.
The way that that's set up internally for us, I should be able to start publishing those so people actually could even follow along at home with the actual documents that we're looking at.
Fun.
So we're making more of a transition to some of those sort of things. I think we're also looking at how do we, as I say, how do we get the information on the website, but then also where else are we getting information? The website tends to be fairly static. You go look something up and you act on it. We have, really since October, we sort of activated trying to have a presence on Facebook.
And what's the address?
I think we're just Williamstown, MA.
MA, comma MA,
Just
Williamstown MA.
it just be Williamstown. Yeah, I mean, if
Because
you go
actually
in,
the website I wanted people to know is
Oh.
williamstown.net.
yeah, it's williamstown.net.
Just
It is.
you
Yeah.
can find it, but there's lots of
That's
Williamstowns.
yeah. You know, there's a few other things that may get you there as well,
Yeah.
but its lead is williamstown.net.
Right.
If you like to think of us as a government site, williamstownma.gov will get you there. So
Yeah.
we're you know,
Yeah.
we're getting that part, and then you know, Facebook, just search for Williamstown, Mass, or
Yeah.
you know, or
And interactive,
or
can
it's
they
linked
ask
off of the
you a
WilliNet
question?
page. Yeah.
Yes, that's true.
They can.
So they can ask you a
Yes,
question.
we actually pay attention there. So, you know, feel free, because I mean, that's the other thing that I look at is, you know, dialogue is helpful there, you know, and some people are comfortable with that environment. You know, not everybody picks up the phone, comes into town hall,
Yep.
you know, you see something, feel free to use that, engage with what we put up in sort of a nice civil way. But I'm hoping it's another tool to reach, you know, get some more information out to people and have a little bit more dialogue.
Excellent. And then looking ahead, FinCom is going to start meeting in the middle of February, and we'll
Yes.
start putting together some budgets. March 1st, we have an election, which is a presidential primary, but also has an important debt exclusion question for our town and Lanesboro. They don't vote on the, are they voting the 1st as well? In
It's
Lanesboro?
unclear.
Yeah,
As
that's
of
what I
this
thought.
point, it's unclear.
Okay, and today is January 14th.
Yes.
But talk a little bit, if you feel comfortable, about what residents or Williamstown residents are being asked to do regarding the debt exclusion for
Sure.
Montclair.
The way that this high school project works, because it's a regional school district, the regional school committee actually has the authority to appropriate the funds to go forward with the high school project. We are expecting, today being the 14th, the school committee is meeting tonight, and you know, it's on their agenda for discussion tonight. So you may recall November, I think we had a special town meeting to vote on revisions to the regionalization agreement,
Yes.
basically adjusting the capital plan. So as conditions change in both towns over time and the ability to pay changes, that's built into the formula instead of locking in where we are today for the next 29 years.
Right.
You know, I've noticed over the past 25, Williamstown's a little different than it was when I first
Yes.
started coming here.
And
So
then special town meeting, unanimous.
unanimous vote.
support.
Unanimous
Yeah.
vote. People have told me not to expect that every town meeting
Yeah.
is a 7-minute unanimous
That's
vote,
right.
but
But
you
that
know,
one was.
let me tell you, you know, after 18 years of town meeting in New Hampshire, it was wonderful.
delightful.
It
Yeah.
was delightful. I sent the video of all 7 minutes back to so many people saying,
This is how it's done.
See, look at
Yeah.
this. Look at this. You can learn a lesson from this. So what's going to happen next is, assuming the school committee votes to go forward, the decision that each town then has is a Proposition 2.5 debt exclusion bill. And so what we have for major projects like this, we are allowed to exclude the payments we have to make from our overall levy limit, so we don't sort of get boxed in and not be able to spend on other priorities that come up as the voters may choose to. So the question that goes to the voters on March 1st is actually to exclude the debt for the high school from our overall levy calculation. So it's a little bit of sort of minutia of local government
Yes.
piece, because you know, and so it may look kind of funny to people, but basically it is the vote we have, the town meeting ballot vote we have to ratify the action of the school committee.
Right.
Because I think the school committee has recognized that in both towns, for it to proceed, we need to have this debt exclusion.
Yep.
So I think their vote will be, they will vote to proceed subject to a positive vote in both towns on this debt exclusion.
Yep.
So.
And we will be doing more conversations about that on WilliNet, and I'm sure we'll be hearing from the building
Sure,
committee.
and there's time. That's March 1st.
Yes.
We decided, and we kind of built the timing around that. We are already scheduled to have a ballot vote that day and teed up for it
Yep.
because that's primary day. So it just makes sense for us. We already have the people. We're already paying for them. We're already set up. We're already getting voters out. Let's just do it once.
And should the vote be defeated, we'll just talk about Williamstown. We're not going to try to guess what will happen in Lanesboro. Should it be defeated, what does it mean to the building project?
I'm not even going to entertain the thought
Okay.
that it's going to be
There we-
defeated. I'm going to take the unanimous vote from November and say that there is a high level of support in this community for taking care of their needs of
But
our
if
school.
it gets defeated, it stops the project.
Yeah, right. It would probably, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
we'd have to regroup in some way and figure
Right.
out where we go next.
And we would lose the almost 60 cents on the dollar from the state at this point.
Yeah, I think if this doesn't go forward, my understanding is our place in line, we have to go back. We go back in line, so
Yeah.
then project costs escalate. That 60% share, which is a moving target, by the
yeah,
way.
it
Anyway,
is.
it's not a guaranteed 60. It
No,
is.
but it's something on
It's
our
it is
dollar.
right.
It's
It
not-
is somewhere. It is somewhere between 50 and 60
Yeah.
on those eligible expenses. So
which
it is.
which is how we did the elementary school. So
Right,
it'd be a shame
right.
to
It is always preferable to spend someone else's money on your project in town.
Well, that brings us up to date for the middle of January. This would probably run through the end of January, and we hope we can come again. Anything else we've missed that you want to share with community members about civic?
I think right now that's generally, I mean, we've covered a lot of what's on our plate. Hopefully this gives people a little bit more background. It's just on my end, this is sort of my first opportunity in this venue. I've enjoyed having the opportunity to meet so many people over the past couple months. Plenty more of you I know I haven't met yet. So I sort of look forward to that opportunity. Feel free to call, come by, grab me at a basketball game, wherever just I'm happy to keep meeting people.
Well, we're happy that you're here. You have been watching Jason Hoch and Debbie Dane, Town Manager and Director at WilliNet, talking about the civic activity of 2016, January. We'll be back next month. If you have a question for Jason that you'd like addressed or an issue that you'd like us to talk about, you can email us. Go to the town website. You'll see his contact information, willinet.org for myself. Thank you for joining us. Have a good day.